In the Fenway, the partial restoration of service on bus route 55 has prompted residents to call for complete restoration and even possibly extending the line to a new transit connection. At issue are current needs, but also needs expected to come with development of new housing and job growth in the neighboring Longwood medical area. To tell us about the service campaign is one of the residents, Charles Martel. Thank you very much for being with us, Charles.
You're welcome. Good afternoon, Chris. Happy to be here.
And good to see you. Charles, introduce us to this bus route, at least to what it has meant to you, the way you use this route.
I've been a resident of the Fenway for 39 years, so it's been an integral part of my transportation from the neighborhood into town and other parts of the city. And it's been an important part of being able to know that I can get places, others can also come to the neighborhood as well. One of the changes in the Fenway, it's now become much more of a destination. Besides the Red Sox, we have many restaurants and other retail that people come to be able to use. And so that's an important part, that it's not only just for residents, also for others coming into the neighborhood.
Well, what was it like earlier this year when the service was shut down? And I think even at the time, the T was saying, well, we're at this particular point, between pandemic and recovery, and we'll revisit this decision. But, when residents saw this and maybe some uncertainty even about the bus shelter, what was that like?
Well, it was a challenge. I mean, we certainly understood in the height of the pandemic that people were not taking the T, and that was for health safety reasons for the most part. There were, however, people that still needed to get to jobs. People in the services still needed to get to places. So it was not totally empty, but the ridership was very low. And so we understood reducing the ridership availability was something that made sense, but would always believe that as things would improve, that they would be restored. And I think this is really the issue, that we felt that there was a commitment to this that really has not been held up.
Well, what I heard residents saying recently is that with the partial restoration, there might be times when the buses don't have many riders, but there are also times when they're crowded. What have you seen?
Well, people certainly, now that we know that the service is available, that it's partial in that it begins at 10 in the morning and ends at 4. So it has some availability, but certainly, as we hope, as people want to go back into work, the bus used to begin at 6 in the morning, would go to Park Street until 7 p.m. And then the bus route was only to Copley Square. And it was that way Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, the buses were going only to Copley Square. They didn't go further. So the use is increased, and certainly as more conversations are being talked about, and to make them more available, because one of the things we're seeing is an increase in automobile use. People are concerned about public transportation, and one of the things was it was overcrowding. So we want to make sure that there are enough services available so people are not all huddled in one bus and don't feel safe, that there are enough services during the course of the day that people can come and go safely, but can still do the things they need to do.
Well, currently, this is a route that zigzags through the Fenway and then takes you down Boylston Street, but only as far as the Boston Marathon finish line. What's the difference between going that far and being able to go to Park Street?
Well, I think the big difference is that for many who were working downtown, being able to stay on one vehicle made a difference in having to get off and then getting onto the T. It saved time. It was efficient. It also can be, for some people, mobility issues of being able to stay on the bus to go all the way down to Park Street. They had other business things to do. That was something that was still available to them. So I think there is, it helps create a link, certainly by being able to go to Copley and taking the train. But I think it does restrict some of the other areas. I mean, for example, the bus would stop on Charles Street South and Beacon Street. And often I would see those going to work at Mass General would get off that stop to walk to Mass General. So there were a lot of people in healthcare that would use the bus to get to the hospitals.
To judge by the gatherings I've seen when people were sort of protesting the cutbacks in service, seems to be a lot of people maybe living on fixed incomes or maybe limited incomes, and they really rely on public transportation.
Well, those individuals certainly do. And one of the challenges is that the idea of suggesting that people can then just use other forms of services like Uber or Lyft, that costs a lot of money and they just don't have that. And so I think that's the problem that for them is that it's not an option financially to them. And it also, again, creates the problem that you have more cars coming into the neighborhood. Uh, but I think for them, those, because we do have people on fixed income, we have those who are seniors that do rely on the T, but we also have a very robust community of others who take the T as well and take the bus. So it's not only those, but they particularly are the ones who have restricted, especially during the time when there was no bus service. They really could not get out in many ways.
Well, the bus stop where people have been gathering in support of the route, it's only 1 or 2 blocks away from some areas where some new buildings are going up and some more housing. How does that change the agenda for service?
Well, the hope is that as we see not only the housing coming up, there's going to be more medical facilities, research areas that come up, people working into the area too. So that's going to think, and the neighborhood in the last 10 years has changed so dramatically. We used to be a neighborhood with the Red Sox, and we had buildings that were 2 and 3 stories tall. We had McDonald's, we had Burger King, and now we have a whole new neighborhood. In many ways, when you think about and look at the Seaport, it's the same thing in terms about a whole new neighborhood that now exists, and that many more people that reside here, including also students who are in the neighborhood as well. And more of them will be coming back in the fall and will want to be able to have access to the bus route.
I would imagine there would be people at the T who are paid to keep an eye on pending developments. But aside from that, what would you like to see going forward, especially with the new schedules for service in the fall?
Well, what we first of all would hope is that we could have a conversation with the MBTA to talk about what criteria they are going to be using to determine schedules. I think if we as adults speak about what it is that they're looking at, what is it about ridership? Are the numbers from the pre-pandemic, what they anticipate is going to happen? But to make it available and therefore to have a conversation than just being told this is now the schedule and we'll see what happens next winter. I mean, the other part is also the buses in the weather in the winter is very essential about getting around safely, and certainly for the elders about when you have ice and snow on the ground, it's certainly much safer to be able to have access to a bus than any other way to get around.
I have to note here that the residents have turned out for this year. They were there on a fairly cold day in March. They were there on a warm and muggy day in July. What does this say about the people in the neighborhood and how they feel?
Well, it says that the people are very committed to this issue and that we have a commitment that's both from those who use the T all the time, as well as others who want to support this as an important, essential way to do. For some also, it's an issue around climate issues. I mean, when you think about the value of public transportation that helps, keep people out of cars and be able to benefit our climate, that's a very central part. So it's also about equity, making sure that people have ways to get to jobs and to other appointments in a way that they can afford it. That is important. So I think the neighborhood really does see this as a central part of who we are and why it's important to bring it back.